Guys, I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me. It's report card time. This is a new series that I started on the channel this year. It's basically constructive criticism of our favorite TV manufacturers on their previous year. This will be the 2023 report card for one of our favorites, which is LG. This is something you guys voted on. We did Sony first. Samsung will be up next. Now, this is a long form video with my partner in crime, Stop the FOMO. This is a long discussion. We really do come to our own conclusions, again, as fans of all the technology and all of the TV manufacturers, where we think they did amazing, from the launches and the discussions at CES to all of their releases to the very end of the year, and to discuss how things shook out. And again, where they succeeded, where we think they took a step back. This is all the manufacturers, as a matter of fact, but also the speculation of where we think they'll go or hope they'll go. So without further ado, here is our report card for LG.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
All right, guys, I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. I'm with my boy, my partner in crime, Stop the FOMO. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great.
It's report card time again. We did Sony last time, and by popular demand, LG just edged out Samsung as the next report card. I got the gloves on too. LG edged out Samsung in the voting of who wanted to be up next. Now, I mentioned this in the intro. This is just constructive criticism. We're fans of all these brands. We wish the best for all of them. But LG is a very interesting story this year, FOMO. What do you think?
Well, I think that LG did what it was supposed to do in that it introduced the MLA, and the MLA may have exceeded expectations. I knew it would be brighter, but for it to be brighter than mini LED TVs, that pretty much shocked me. Now, obviously, mini LED TVs can't get brighter in full screen, but we're talking sports content, the stuff that you guys watch every day. I was very impressed what MLA could do. For sure. I mean, and that's what it's about. So the G3, the MLA. Yep.
Yeah. So we're speaking on the G3 for those of you that don't know either one of us. Let's set the stage this way, FOMO. We were at CES last year, and we have CES happening in less than a month now, which is why these videos are being shot. They're basically our year in review for each manufacturer. And I'll never forget, we're sitting in the car, and CES wasn't even launched yet. We started seeing the rumors for the G3 and the S95C being brighter than last year. Yeah. And I know at that moment, we both were pretty excited about what the G3 was going to be. Then we had this event where we saw the G3, the Z3, the C3, and then the M series and some monitors. So for my thought, they had an amazing CES. Their big event, which was open to the public, showed a lot of different things, the TVs that went up and down, other technology. But I thought they were second best as far as showing what they had in some ways. Yeah. But once the G3 lit us up, and we covered it in that first week of TVs being launched after CES, we kind of didn't hear a peep from them for the rest of the year. So talk to me a little bit about our live stream together, 19 hours almost of G3.
2 days, yeah.
2 days, which I'll put the description, those videos in the description. But us going from talking G3 from CES to the first maybe a month after they launched, FOMO, and then we kind of didn't mention LG again other than in comparison videos. That's where I'll start, where I think they faltered. I want you to take it from there for me, a little bit about even your coverage of the G3, and then how we really didn't talk much about them after that.
So I love that LG released it so early. So they released it about the similar time as the Samsung S95C, maybe a few weeks later, right?
Yep.
Right. Samsung 77-inch came out, and then the G3 came out a few weeks later, and Robert had them both. So we came to Value Electronics and compared them, and the G3 definitely impressed over last year. I mean, what are you supposed to do? You get better than your TV was last year. Yeah. And compared to the G2, that G3 was like, boom, bright, MLA, right? Solid. And next to it was the S95C, and we're like, wow, boom, also solid, right? And the G3 was right there, kind of exchanging the blows. We had John Reformato there, and he made sure both TVs were at their best. And
Yeah.
ultimately, we were on a high as far as excitement for 2023 TVs. But there's only so much you could do for so many months, right? It came out
Yeah, of
early. We
course.
loved it and highly recommended, but it was expensive. And we kind of hung on to the G3, S95C, then the S90C. So those were our three recommendations with their use
Yeah.
cases. And then Sony released in what, early October. And then suddenly
Yeah.
we're all excited again because Sony not only had QD OLED, which made it look very similar to the S95, S90C, but XR Clear elevated it above the competition. And that's been our discussion for the last several weeks is
Yeah.
let's talk about processing and software. And both LG and Samsung kind of fell back because we exhausted that discussion. I mean, what is more to be said in the
Yeah.
context of what's already been said, right? And
Well, it's
Sony,
interesting. But interesting. If I keep you there
yeah,
for 1 second, you just brought out an amazing point. G3 comes out. You actually had the G3 before Robert had it. That's how early you had it. You still flew
right.
down. Then the S95C came out, or the S95C may have been out. I can't remember which one was first.
S95C came out first. Yeah.
First, okay. But you came down, spent the time. But you just illustrated an amazing point. They actually had the floor without competition directly to the G3 other than the S95C. There was really nothing from Sony.
Mhm.
The X93 was what was from Sony. So as you mentioned, it was in October, but they almost had this free space where they launched the C3, but there wasn't, I guess, like to your point, you couldn't make more conversation over these two TVs. And actually the MLA hurt the C3.
Oh,
Then
yeah,
Samsung launches everything. Not only they have the S90C, they have the 900C, the QN95C. They had all these different models. And I guess what I'm trying to say is where I want you to pick it back up for me is right there with that G3 coverage. Then everybody, then I think Hisense and TCL, they come in the middle a little bit. They start putting their TVs out. G3 just kind of fell by the wayside, not even because of the A95 or even
Right.
the S95. It was almost like it tied the S95 and then it fell out. So do you think that was, should it have come out later, you think? Where are you with how it released?
The difficulty for me with the G3 was the price because the S95C also expensive, but it had the S90C price to fall back on as. You know
Right
what?
there. Yeah.
You can't afford that premium, but you want 99% of QD OLED without one
Good
Connect
point.
box. S90C. The G3, it's all or nothing. You either have MLA and you pay the premium or you don't, and you go with the C3, B3, or whatever. And that MLA was such a jump in performance, whereas
It
the
was.
C3 essentially might as well get the C2. And that's what everyone says is might as well get the C2. Might as well get the C2. I mean, why are you
Yeah.
holding off? Or if you're getting an
Yeah.
83-inch, might as well get the C2 or the C3. And
Exactly.
so OLED, the LG OLED in 2023 is defined only by the MLA G3, the 55, 65, and 77, and priced at that premium. People are like, okay, well, the Sony will be very close. Let's just wait for the Sony. And that's the difficulty for many people was that the G3, we know what we got, a brighter G2, right? It's super bright. I was very
Yeah.
impressed by its brightness, but you always had this discussion until the Sony release. On all of our live streams, what do people say? Yeah, but
Let's
let's see
wait,
what
hang
this,
back.
yeah,
Yeah,
let's see what
let's hang back.
Sony does, right?
Yeah.
Because it takes, you guys love the S90C, like we love the S90C and the S95C. Yeah, but what will Sony do with processing? It almost as if we could not have a final determination of the G3's value without waiting or without having seen A95L. Like we're not allowed to have a final conclusion. I mean, I say
Yeah.
it's great, but what's the response? Yeah, but how does it compare to the Sony? What if it is cheaper, right? Because
Yeah.
we don't even know what
And
the
it was-
prices were.
And it was so far back, but you made such a good point with the S90C. You were able to fully recommend the S90C because people weren't going to be able to afford the A95L anyway. So
Right.
it gave you the green light to say, look, if you can't do the S95C, go S90
Mhm.
and then feel good about it because you still have a QD OLED. Where with G3, as you mentioned, and I like the C3 a lot, but it was hard for you to then transition and say, hey, C3 with the S90 being in the room. because there wasn't a MLA light, which I thought was a big mistake. I thought the C series should have had some kind of form of MLA. And I think, as you mentioned before, by not having an MLA at 83, the MLA was stuck with, I think, 3 sizes. Was it 65? No,
Yep.
55, 65,
55,
and
60,
77.
Yep.
So then you had some smaller
Yeah.
sizes that would have been helpful.
So this is the whole point of what we're talking about. What you want to talk about today is LG's grade, not the G3's grade. Because if I could separate the G3 from LG, it would be a completely different grade. So you see the problem? Because
Or
like
we'll get into
Sony,
that in a
with
minute.
Sony, right?
Yeah.
I looked at Sony as a package: the X90L, the X95L, the A80L, and the A95L.
I see
And
where you're
even
going.
as a whole, right?
Yeah.
I gave them a great grade because
Yeah.
there was so much there. And if
Yeah.
I pulled out the A95L, it would also have a great grade that's similar to the entire lineup.
It's not its identity.
Sony had a strong grade overall from the bottom, X90L, all the way to the top, A95L, and everything in between, different sizes, right? It hit everything, and it got the A from me.
Yeah.
With LG, you got to pick and choose. I mean, no QNED, right? There's no mini LED entry. I mean, they had a kind of like a,
Yeah.
they were selling out what they had available last year,
Yeah,
but nothing
just
new
brought it
this
over.
year for
Yeah.
the LCD TVs. And in their OLED, just one model, the G3. The C3 and the B3, I mean, they're really rehashed versions of last year with a slightly
So-
improved software.
So let's go there, and that's where I think I was very excited last year. Let's just say the year before. I actually had a lot of faith in the QNED, I should say, especially
it
their
looked very
8K
promising.
model. Yeah, because the 8K model was going to be 86, if you remember. Weird size, and we thought it was going to have all the gaming features, 4 HDMI 2.1, G-Sync, the whole thing. It didn't. It was also a very obscure TV. I hadn't even had a chance to really look at it myself.
Mhm.
And I couldn't wait to see what they were going to do with it, especially once we saw the reviews and saw them ourselves a little bit, what they were going to do next year. And then it was leaked out that, look, they're not going to follow up with it.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, you and I also would criticize Sony back in the day for limiting their models. One size X95, there's
Yeah.
nothing to choose from. In the end, they became the most well-rounded company. They had something almost for everyone, where Samsung had almost too much. And then
Yes.
LG had like the hot actor. It had like the superstar celebrity that just kind of didn't have any other teammates. And as much as I like the C series and I recommend it all the time, without fail, people don't say to me C series or the A80, which is behind me. They say C series or S90C. And there's no gaming advantage for LG, which always was the case with Sony.
Yeah.
So that left them on an island. And then the C series was just hard to recommend when the G3 is in its own lineup. If there was a C series MLA Lite, that would have been so much easier to just say, well, look, it's not quite as good as the C series. And then, as you mentioned, FOMO, my favorite TV for the last number of years was the ZX, the Z9, the Z2. These are the 8K WRG OLEDs from LG. They're my favorite TVs in the last 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
They don't have a Z3 this year, but to our point also, FOMO, there was no clarity if the MLA would be on either one of those.
Yeah.
So if you remember, there was a rumor that it was on the 77, which you're like, okay, I can't wait to see that. But then again, how am I recommending the 88 to somebody for 30 grand if the 25 grand? So they put themselves in this really weird spot. Talk to me a little bit about, I know the Z series is a dream TV for many people, but without MLA, could you ever recommend it? Or did you think the Z series was a big mistake not releasing it?
So the Z series is where the M series is this year. It's a lifestyle TV. I mean, that's what we have to call it. It's, you don't get 8K other than to show off I have 8K, but the image quality is not better because you don't have the content. You're sitting 12 feet away, whatever it is. So ultimately, the M series this year is that premium TV. It's $25,000 to $30,000, very similar price, and it comes in a 97-inch. The 8K doesn't. So the M actually it exceeds
It's
the
the big
8K
one.
because between you and me, if you had to choose between a 97 and an 88, I don't care if the 88 has 8K, you go with the 97.
Yeah.
Same
So it almost pushed out the 8K then because it was
absolutely
wasn't.
did. It has more
Yeah.
advanced features, right? It's got the Zero Connect box. So if you are that premium customer, you're like, wait, the M3 is a better TV as a technology, as something you could show off. It's larger. It's got the Zero Connect box. It's wow. It's got no wires. It's got the latest and greatest of what LG Electronics puts into its product, right?
Processing UI.
Whereas, yeah, everything, new processing. Whereas the Z3 is, or Z2, it would be a one-trick pony. It's 8K. That's it. There's
Yeah.
nothing about it that's interesting. And so this year, I think the M3 takes that flagship, fancy lifestyle premium TV that normally is the Z series, and I can see that LG Electronics made the M series their premium instead of the
Yeah.
Z series, and it works because I saw it. It's even though I didn't get to see the completed installation, it's an
Yeah.
amazing technology, and it's something that if you have $30,000 burning in your pocket, you wouldn't get
Yeah.
the 88 inch, you get 97 inch, and that size, from 10 feet away, 12 feet away, perfect.
So this is why I love that we're unscripted, by the way, guys. And we're looking all over the place. As we're discussing it, what I'm even coming up with myself is that MLA actually became their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. Because if I had somebody, and I've had people ask me, what do you think of this one? Whether it's the 83-inch G3 or the M series, the next thing they ask as they look at our videos, same with XR Clear, does it have XR Clear? Does it have MLA? When I have to then say to a premium client or customer, right? So X93 is a good example. Hey, I really want this X93. I'm ready to buy an 85-inch, but I heard it doesn't have XR Clear. It doesn't. Well, forget that. Why would I buy that if the X90 has it? So the G3, though it's their flagship, you see where I'm going? Even if the Z3 was here, somebody, even that has the money that is in our live streams, would say, well, FOMO, I'm going to buy the Z. So my point is, it almost becomes like you're a laughing stock for buying the most expensive one that's missing the biggest feature.
Yeah.
It'd be very hard to recommend that, to say, hey, look, I have the most expensive Z series. That means the guy with no money is going to say, well, FOMO, does it have MLA? You're like, nope. Like, sorry. So you see, they painted themselves into that corner where if the Z series had MLA and they worked their way down, and maybe just the premium one C series had the MLA. I guess my point is you have to go kind of MLA.
Okay.
First.
This is where, this is not unique to LG. This is where most electronics companies, LG, Samsung, Sony, this is where they're weak. They don't create a journey for their customers. Meaning, what does that product roadmap, that product narrative look like? What you just said, that should be your storyboard for every year. Because if you have a storyboard when you walk people through the lineup, then you could explain, oh, well, this is when you would watch, this is when you would get the Sony X93L. Oh, no, this is when you would get the X90L. You don't need XR Clear.
You have the different places.
They're relying on us, right? You and I have to come up with that storyboard to help guide people through the product because it's, use case specific. Samsung, to avoid storyboarding the journey, they have so many products that you cannot help. There is something for everyone at every price point, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with Sony this year, actually, they did a pretty good job. The X93L is a little bit of it's a difficult product because there were a few times when I did recommend the X93L because normally I would say, okay, I'd still rather you go with the X90L at a larger size for the same price as the X93. Like, I could fit this. I go, if you could fit it, go the X90L because you have an older TV.
Yeah.
But if they have a more recent TV, like let's say they have the X, I don't know, 900H or whatever, then I may recommend the X93L because they're used to it, but they want, they want more zones, want more brightness. They're used to the Sony look. They just want something that's brighter, but they can't go larger. They're stuck in this size. And in the US, there is no X95L in the 65-inch size, but the X90L to them, but they want that premium feel, and the X93L gives them that premium feel. So you have those situations where I can walk them through, okay, this X93L works. Now with LG, it's very difficult for me to walk them through a journey that doesn't include me saying, well, why don't you get an S90C? Well, why don't you? At some
Yeah.
point, it's always the G3 or the S90C. And now that their street pricing is now dropped to, I think, 65 inches, $2,300. That gives it a place now because the Sony A95L is still $3,300.
Because
I
it
could,
just came out.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
and people ask me, well, is the XR Clear $1,000 better? I go, heck no. Save
Yeah,
$1,000.
Yeah.
Spend a
Yeah.
couple of hundred on a sound bar, and you're still ahead, right? Because
Yeah.
at the end, $2,300 makes sense. But at launch, the G3 was $3,000. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't recommend it with the S90C out there at the 65 inch, or for that price at the 77 inch. But now that Sony's released and its price is still premium, I have a journey for G3 buyers. I still don't have a place for the C3 I have a place for the B3 before the
Yeah.
C3, right?
Of
I mean, it's
course.
crazy.
So you painting that picture, let's paint mine actually, because us that have been doing this a long time, and even those of us that didn't start YouTube channels, we've always looked at LG OLEDs the minute they came out. And you're like, I wish I had that. And then when they were 77 inches and they were 15 grand, we were all in YouTube at that point being like, well, that's impossible. And then I even rented a B8 for the channel and fell in love with it, but it was small.
Yeah.
So I always wanted my first OLED. And that was LG. That was nobody else. I didn't want the A1E from Sony. I didn't care about that. I just needed an LG. Then LG also pioneered the gaming, which was so ironic because of the fear of burn-in, which is nothing for either one of us.
Right.
G-Sync compatible, HDMI 2.1, all the ports. All of a sudden, they were on the cutting edge. Samsung was right there with VRR and even the Q90R, but it was still LG that had the pixel response, and it was an OLED. They were alone. Value Electronics, they won 5 years in a row. So they were always that bar to reach. And that's where I find it a little sad. I have an LG C1 at my home theater at home. And I was fairly positive, FOMO, that the next TV I would purchase would probably be another LG if I didn't go 8K. That's how much I liked their gaming. They did everything. I have an A80J at home. I'm pretty happy with it for movies. Well, behind me is an A80L at 83 inches. What differentiated itself was it had XR Clear, which is my MLA in a way. So I only chose it over the C series because it had that little addition, and it's behind me, and I love it, and it's good enough for gaming. Now, also with gaming, being the pioneer in gaming, FOMO, I feel like they also fell back a little bit this year, considering Samsung had the 144 hertz, whether it works or not. They also have a more elaborate game bar and more presets. So it's almost like LG kind of fell into second right there. Talk to me a little bit about the gaming, because I know we had some issues with SD. Now, we're not here to beat up LG. We're really trying to illustrate where they slipped up maybe and where they can improve next year. We already know they're looking at 144 hertz for next year.
Yes.
But I feel like they kind of lost their way last year, and then they almost became reactive versus proactive in many ways.
So I think where they slipped up is they focused so much on the G3 being that flagship shootout contender, which it is, right?
Yep.
That everything that wasn't the G3 was mispriced. The C3 was priced way too high. I mean, I hate to say it, but when it's, and Samsung's partly to blame in the sense that
S95B, $5.
LG had no idea that the S90C would be so aggressively priced. And had they known, maybe. Yeah, I mean, 77 inches, people were getting it for under $2,000.
Remember
way before Black Friday.
Do you remember at CES, though, when you and I were filming the S95, we were asking the Samsung reps if there was even going to be a 77 S90C, and they couldn't confirm it. Remember? They're like, well, we don't know. Right? They couldn't confirm it, but go ahead.
Yeah, and then it came out, and then shortly after its release, by Prime Day around July, it was selling for under $2,000, the 77 inch. And the LG B3 77 inch currently, let me check, is $1,800. So B3 is only $100 or $200 less than the S90C. Now, for
Mhm.
LG, that's actually a pretty good price. So if you want an LG, I've been
Yeah.
recommending the B3 at 77, but it's so hard if you don't care about Dolby Vision. This is why people are getting the B3. If you don't care
Yeah.
about Dolby Vision, the S90C is to me a no-brainer purchase at that
Yeah.
price. And so LG becomes a one product company at this point because
That's
the
yeah.
way well, their mistake is, where was that? What was their mistake? They created their lineup without context and in relation to the other TVs that would be released, right?
Yeah.
They still saw themselves as the OLED guys. But
Yep.
unfortunately, Samsung and Sony introduced very compelling OLEDs with features that I would have to say are as compelling as MLA. And MLA only applies to the G3. The A80L doesn't have MLA. So it's going against
Yeah.
the C series. And when the
Yeah.
minute you say,
With
oh,
XR Clear. But with
XR Clear, that's it,
Yeah.
right? Oh, I stream a lot. I don't care about gaming. You hear
Yeah.
that. I go, then you should consider the Sony A80L, which comes a
Yeah.
question. Is it $1,000 better? No, but it
Yeah.
is about $100 to $200 better. And the
Yeah.
C3 is about $100 to $200 less expensive. So that premium, people can bridge that gap and jump, or the A75L, which is very
Yep.
close to the C3 pricing, right? So it's yeah, I mean, that's it. That was where LG fell apart, is it put too much focus on the G3 and the MLA, and everything else was just a rehash of last year, which means it fell behind the Samsung S90C and the Sony A80L.
Because they all improved.
They all
And I think
improved.
what you said too, which is so interesting, is having that story and having that release. They kind of didn't have that backup plan to have anything for us to continue to discuss.
Mm-mm.
Right? It was like once we saw the G3 and we were blown away by it because it was one of the first TVs that we saw, we became a little numb to it in a way.
Right.
And then that narrative changed and then what's so funny about this, and all of Sony's missteps, everything we thought was a misstep, no CES. Remember, they're afraid. They're scared. My thumbnails had me looking for them. But all of their missteps and, releasing this one, even releasing the X90L late, the A95L, look how late they released that one. It's basically a 2024 TV. What it did that I think everyone's going to catch on to, it kept their name and the fear and the waiting for that. They were talked about the entire year, even when they weren't there. Where LG actually showed up with, and first of all, their processing is phenomenal. But they showed up with the right product. They won. Let's put it this way: if there was no QD OLED, they would have dominated everything.
Yeah.
But they basically, I thought they beat the QD OLED in some ways, and I do recommend the G3 over the Samsung in some ways. And that would be probably a better conversation if the S90C didn't exist. They probably would have just neutralized each other. Because we don't talk about the S95C as much as we did.
Yeah.
But G3 almost got neutralized with that. Then Sony just has this slow turtle walk all through the year. Like, hey, guys, how are you? Oh, yeah, here's my, A80L. It's pretty good. Hey, you should take a look at that one. And now we're talking about that TV, which is mine, like it just came out.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know if they did it on purpose. We'll have to talk to them. But LG just seemed like they put all their guns out too early. Now, do you think it would have been better to release the C series first and then have the ML? I know this is after the fact, but do you think, because they did that the year before, the G series was after last year?
Yeah, no, there's no way, because what would have happened? We would have been at Valley Electronics. We would have had a C series go against the S95C. It would have been destroyed.
Yeah.
It would have been.
Yeah,
it would not.
If you remember last year, we ended up doing the G2 versus the C2, and a lot of people didn't see
and the
difference.
C2 looked the same, right? But
yeah,
the C3
almost the same is clearly better. So now that we
already know that, yeah.
So now that we rehashed the year, and we'll give a grade. We did Sony already. We'll give a grade also, but I'd like to talk a little bit about a little speculation. We did this on our live stream together on your channel. What we're thinking we'll see. And what we're hoping to see. Let me know what you. Let me get what you hope you'll see and what you're hopeful for, and then maybe what you think you'll see in a few weeks.
So what I hope to see from LG is MLA on the C series. That will keep LG's mid-tier relevant into 2024. because well, it should have been out this year. Honestly, as much as I love seeing the G3 with MLA, seeing the C3 without MLA, the performance margin between QD OLED and C3 is it's just vast enough, right? The S90C, and we're just talking about just everything, right? The specular highlights and the brightness and all that. The S90C is definitely so close to the flagship S95C and the A95L that the C3 could not compete for that price. And next year, they have to address that. If they do a C4 that pretty much is a rehash of the C3, which was a rehash of the C2, you got a problem. Then they
Well,
need
and
to
to your
drop the
point,
price.
I guess this is where you and I talked about it. With the margins being what they are, FOMO, you really can't drop it too low
Yeah.
because then you bump into the B, and now you're bumping into the Hisenses and TCLs that are bigger and cheaper. So they almost have no. If we were at the 5,000 price point, then we have areas to go. But now you're getting into $1,200.
So
you can't put the C series that low.
you have to
So you
eliminate.
have to do MLA. Got to do MLA.
Or you eliminate the B series to have the A series, right? Basically, I don't even know
60
why the
hertz.
B series. Honestly, the B and C are so close in price, and the performance is so difference is so minimal. I keep on asking. The only difference is it has one processor, so that they only have two HDMI ports. So all you're saving is half of the processing, so that you could have only or save money on only two HDMI 2.1.
Which they build their own processors, by the way.
Right. So they just cut that out.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
the
Frank, take it
audio-
out.
Yeah, let's save $100. And look at the price difference, right? They save
Yeah,
$100
you're right.
here.
You just figured it
They save
out.
$50 there, and at the end, it's $200 difference between a B3 and a C3.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
really? So
Where the A series was
B3
what 60 hertz. The A series was 60 hertz. We
and
had some
that's
differences.
that's fine,
That
right?
made sense. Yeah.
Give it a decent processor, but drop the panel quality in both brightness and refresh rate, because if you're just streaming, you do not need 120 hertz anymore, right? So the A2, A3 ended up being a pretty good bargain at many sizes, and I loved it. I mean, a 77-inch A series for $1,400, I would recommend that to most people all day long, but that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So next year, LG need to have a product journey in their lineup, so that each product has a very specific place for us to say, hey, this is what it was designed for. You fit what they're looking for, right? And
Yeah,
next
that's what we
year,
do.
get rid of the B series or get rid of the C series. This is one of the two does not
Yeah.
belong. And I think it should be
Yeah.
the B, because the C has such goodwill. So, or if the C has MLA, then the B series could continue to exist. But if there's no MLA on the C series, the C4, then you're going to get rid of the B series and let the C be your budget tier. And then the G is your flagship. And then you give it that true separation, which in the past, like you said, everyone looked forward to the C series because that was the flagship. And the G was just the
Yeah.
designer TV, right? Gallery.
It was,
Gallery
yeah,
means
the G-
design.
We started that with the G1.
Yep.
But then you had the E series, I think, and those were the gallery ones, but
Wallpaper.
They were
right.
virtually the same. But
Mhm.
staying with MLA for 1 second, FOMO, I think I want to see a full press MLA. Of course, I would selfishly want an 83. I think 83 is a waste of their time. It's just a statement to say they're the only ones with it, because I know that they don't sell many of those. But I think
Mhm.
MLA and their monitors, their 42 and 48 inch would be a great place to go. The problem is you kill your 83, no one will buy them knowing they don't have MLA. So obviously, if you could do MLA across the board, and then you'd have to do a Z series, just because that is your true flagship, right? Just to have, you really just kind of need more options for them. So
So that goes to another point, is between putting resources into a Z series or resources into the MLA, I would put resources to MLA, given you have limited resources, right?
absolutely.
Because
Yeah, yeah.
if they were to spend that money to, I don't think they need to retool, but just to refresh their Z
course.
series or refresh and add MLA to the C, add a little bit more money to refresh the C with MLA. You'll sell a lot more TVs, because even if they refresh the Z, how many people are shopping for a $15,000, $25,000 TV, 8K, God forbid? Because I'll tell you that the people who are in that market, lifestyle owners, they're looking at the M series. So that's why the M series
they
is
like those.
like,
They like the
right?
sexy. Yeah.
It's sexy, no wires, right? The other one says, oh, it's 8K, but the narrative criticizing 8K is so well established now, they can no longer overcome it. No TV maker can overcome the 8K criticism. Oh,
The
there's
EU,
no
well, the energy
right?
now. Yeah, the
The
energy.
energy, it's
So
not
what
a
do we?
right, all that
So
stuff.
what do we think, FOMO? I think we're both in line with this. I think we're looking for C4 performance being equal to last year's G3 or this year's G3.
It may
peak
not
brightness,
quite, I'd say
and then
a
G4.
touch
Where do you go then?
G4. Yeah, so talk about MLA, right? So the G4 with better MLA, maybe, the incremental brightness, 15%, just an incremental brightness above the G3.
Which is
And
good.
then,
Which is good.
which is great. And the C4, slightly less bright, so there's that separation, but it has MLA,
Keeps
and
the
that's
G3
critical.
in play. It keeps the G3 in play for next year.
And I bet you
So-
software limited too, right? I mean, it may end up
yeah.
being the same MLA, but doing what they do, it would be cheaper to have the exact same MLA on all TVs, software limit the C4 so that artificially, it's less
Yep.
bright, I'm paying less. But then people
True.
go into the service menu and find a way to pump up that MLA.
But as you
yeah, it
mentioned,
does-
as you mentioned, FOMO, the story, you just laid out the story. The story is this: next year C4, we recommend it to people. It's almost as good as last year's G3. But if you want the G3, it's still there.
Yeah.
And then if you want the flagship, there's the G4. We weren't able to do that this year. What we had this year was G3 or nothing, or C2, or C1 if it was around. That was kind of how we just kind of laid out where our stories ended this year. And I can illustrate it this way. Last week we did an E3 hype video on LG, and we talked for 2 or 3 hours, and LG was only a part of that video for the first 45 minutes. Because when people were asking us what to buy now, the G3 was the C was it wasn't recommended often. There was a lot of the budget LED. It was a lot of LED conversation, which is funny because without the QNED, I guess my point is this. I like the QNEDs or QNEDs, but without them having a horse in that race, they all of a sudden just weren't able to be in the conversation. They just go sit outside, which was sad because then Samsung was in there with the QN90C, the 900C, all these different 85C we talked about, the X90L. And then all of a sudden LG had to really sit out there and say, wow, we don't even have anybody to talk about here. Nope. And I think that's also a mistake, but we know full well they can't revitalize that. It's a money loser, don't you think, to revitalize QNED?
So here's the problem. This is why LG cannot revitalize their mini LED QNED lineup. Samsung has invested so much money into manufacturing Neo QLED. They have factories in Vietnam dedicated to making Neo QLED. It's sunk cost, right?
VA, ADS, they have all these different panels
and they have huge margins on it because they're able to use their own chips and everything to make these Neo QLED mini LED TVs. LG does not have that. They have it for OLED. I mean, they're lined up to great margins on OLED, but they did not invest in manufacturing QNED mini LED TVs to the degree that Samsung did. And now to kind of restart it, quick start it to get it to the same performance level as Samsung and Sony and have it cost less because for the same price, it's not going to perform as well. We already know that. And not to mention TCL and Hisense continues to push the envelope of performance for that price point in mini LED. LG is like, why are we? That investment should have been done 3 years ago.
Well, and to your point, FOMO, not only that, but QNED's IPS panel. It's all thrown around IPS on all these companies when Samsung has the ADS, which is actually their preferred.
Oh, wait,
panel.
I forgot to tell you. No more. BOE, it looks like they won't have access to the ADS panel. They might have to go somewhere else and go back to VA because they're in a lawsuit. They're in a lawsuit with BOE, the source of ADS panels. Now,
so that'll be for the Samsung report card.
that's So that's a
Well,
whole
I guess
different story.
so. But I guess my point is, let's just say that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
ADS was already improved to IPS in a way.
It's great.
And then QNED was stuck, QNED was stuck with IPS, which was when people discovered, hey, that's an IPS panel. But they did such a good job of making that not look IPS. It had
Mhm.
huge viewing angles, very wide viewing angles.
Thousands of dimming zones. I mean, their dimming zone
Yeah.
count was up there.
So
Yeah.
I thought that had they refined it, they had a VA look to it with the viewing angles of IPS. I thought they would have been fine, but to your point, revitalizing that wasn't going to work. So I guess we should wrap it up. It's been a long one, but let's go ahead and give our grade. But really quick, we're both looking for an MLA full press.
It has to.
I think we're hoping. I think it's not just a hope; it's a must. So I'm
It's a
hoping,
must.
and we're predicting the C4 will be a big hit this year. It'll be they'll both shine as bright in a sense of being the stars of the show. G3 was a gold medal type thing, and they put this, and I think the C3 is great. Don't get me wrong. With no S90C, the C3 would have been perfectly fine. But the S90C was just, and who would have thought that that TV was going to be the one that was going to be everybody's thorn? It didn't bother the A80L though. So,
No.
And who thought about that TV other than us talking about it? So, in short, we're hoping for full press C series MLA, an improved G4, an MLA across the board from a 42, 48, and then I would say 83. Do you want more sizes for G3, or are you good with the sizes they have?
Given the reality of volume, if the MLA is not on the 83, it doesn't matter because there's no 83 QD OLED. See, that's what we have to remember.
Yeah.
What they would lose out to are 100-inch mini LED TVs. So the budget that would have been for an 83-inch OLED, right? And I know a lot of you are saying, oh, 83-inch OLED. But if you're coming from an older LCD TV,
of course,
that improvement at 100-inch is still improved image quality and size. And that's what a lot of people have to deal with is if you have the room for a 100-inch TV and you're coming from an 8-year-old LCD TV, go straight to the 100-inch LCD TV. You're going to get more awesome. But if you're coming from an OLED, yeah, sure. Stick with OLED, go with the 83-inch OLED. I get it. No problem. But people are becoming more cognizant of the options because of us, and we help guide them through. And given what we talked about, QD OLED, not in the 83, means that LG can take a deep breath and skip MLA in the 83 and focus on adding it to the smaller sizes, right? But here's something to think about is the monitors on the smaller sizes don't have Dolby Vision. And it makes me, wait, Dolby Vision gaming, I thought that was a whole big thing. How can your gaming monitors not support HGIG or Dolby Vision gaming? Both of them, right?
Yeah.
The TVs support HGIG / Dolby Vision, but your gaming monitors don't. And I know a lot of people say, well, technically HGIG is this, but
I miss HGIG on the ADL. I did like it when it was being utilized. I liked it. But also to your point, though, I think the 83-inch would just be a statement where it would be the only game in town. But I don't know the numbers of that. I still think the 83 is not a big seller. I don't think people are actually buying 83-inch OLEDs other than us and a handful of people that we talk to. But I will tell you, I could not buy an 83-inch G3. I couldn't. I can easily buy it. I saw them compared to each other. My video on the comparison made it to where I could not even consider it, which is a shame because I plan on buying the 83-inch G3. So let's go ahead and get your score of how they did this year. I know you're saying what we hope, but let's go ahead and give us a score.
So let's look at it as a one-horse score, meaning I'm just going to score the G3. That for me is definitely an A-, right? Because even as an enthusiast, it still does very well. And as an enthusiast who watch all types of content, sports and so forth, it is my choice for sports watching. It has good enough image processing, everything, and it stays bright. So I could watch all types of sports. Whereas on the Sony, I saw it dim. A95L, you could see it dim in either standard
and the Samsung, the QD OLED.
And the Samsung, the QD OLED. QD OLED persists a little bit longer in its brightness, but G3 ultimately ended up being brighter than my mini LED watching similar sporting content, right? The U8K and the QM8. So to me, that's just amazing that the G3 ends up being brighter than the X90L even. So it's overall well-roundedness, right? A minus, and
But does the
sure,
A minus come in, FOMO, because there was no stand? That was a big sticking point for people.
for me, the minus is it's not state of the art in terms
New
of
technology. Oh, WRGB.
that color luminance. Basically,
Gotcha.
you don't get the full BT 2020, and
Yep.
you see it in some content. And the fact that you can
Yep.
see it in some content, and you got 3 TVs that are better: S90C, S95C, and the A95L. So it has to be the A minus. And I'm not even talking audio or stand. We're just talking, straight image quality. And so A minus is pretty good, actually, right? But
Yeah.
LG, its entire lineup, given everything else that's there, I would have to say it's a B plus, which isn't terrible. And this is
Yeah.
only OLED. I'm looking at LG as a OLED only TV maker.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what no way.
So,
Other way.
B
No way to
plus.
look at them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to do the same with the G3. I would say the G3 to me is an A. Where I will knock it is the minus because of the stand for me. It sounds ridiculous, but people were pricing them this way and saying, well, hey, I don't like that it's thick compared to the C
Right.
series. And I have to buy a stand. And look, we talk to people all day, even at the high end, they're adding up every couple $100, the taxes, this and that.
It's the trouble of adding this and that. Now, to be fair to LG, Black Friday, I guess starting last month,
they added a
threw
little
in the stand, right? But
stand,
dude,
it
you
was
should have
so-
done that months ago.
Yeah, it's so late in the year. And also, I think to your point, the WRGB inherently does have some banding. And I did see that on the G3
Yes.
more than, where QD OLEDs are clean. And actually, this A80L is clean. But this A80L is also an A90J, essentially. So maybe that's part of it. But I did see the drawbacks, which made me apprehensive that it still has the limitations of a regular WRGB, where I didn't see any banding on any of the QD OLEDs yet, period. But I will give them an A minus for the G3. As a whole, I have to go with just a flat B, simply because of the lack of options this year. And coming out strong, I love the TV and I love the company and I'm pulling for them. We know people over there.
Oh, yeah. We do.
But having the lineup be so anemic without the Z series overshadowing it, at least Samsung had the 900C that no one cared about, but it's still there.
Right.
And then
or the Z9K at Sony, right?
And people still talk about the Z9K.
Mm-hmm.
I wish if they had even a Z series, as your point, to a really magnificent showpiece, I think that would have been great for visual. But it became kind of a one-trick pony, which is interesting because I did a video on LG calling them the dark horse, and it had 2 horses in the beginning of the year. And to me, that is kind of the shame because, again, FOMO, last year, our most recommended TV was a C2. Out of all the G2 and S95B, and this year, the G3 is not the most recommended TV. I think they had a missed opportunity. I think being reactive in the last 2 years versus proactive really hurt them this year. So I'm going to go with a flat B for me.
Now, yeah.
And gaming took a little
right.
bit of and gaming, unfortunately, which always elevates them. We had a lot of talk of SDR gaming being a little darker on the G series.
It was.
And the C series. Now, I didn't notice that myself, but it was enough to be in the conversation to where now this is how I judge it, FOMO. We, on our live streams, they're 5 hours long. We specifically tell people per person what we want. It almost always brought somebody over to Samsung because they didn't have that issue. So what was always the LG's biggest strength was gaming. Don't even worry about it. You're good. G-Sync, they're the only ones that have it. Go. It made me not go away from them, but it made me question it a little bit, which is what I didn't do before. So they also lost a little bit in gaming, which I think is why they're not a B plus for me. So it's a flat B for me.
Yeah. I was frankly pretty surprised their SDR gaming. Even with MLA, they screwed up on the software. I mean, there should have been a firmware update that they could have fixed, and they still haven't addressed it. It's still not as bright as an S90C and SDR. And for many of you, you're like, oh, whatever. There are workarounds, I'm sure.
No, it matters.
At the end of the day, you want it to be plug and play without having to go to owner forum to look up, what is the best setting. Because I know out of the box, both the A80L, the A95L, and the S90C, plug it in and it looks awesome. And you have the presets, and the presets are easy to use, no trickery. Now, I will give that LG works very hard to make their HGIG as accurate as possible, but that's not to say the other TVs don't have similarly good looking HGIG. It's not called HGIG, but
Yeah,
it's close
static
enough.
versus
Right. Yeah, exactly. Static, or on the Sony, it's just whatever.
gradation. Yeah, gradation
gradation
versus
preferred.
brightness or something. Yep.
But they're also good, also close. So, which means that at the end of the day, A minus is a great grade for the G3.
Yep.
But
I agree.
as a brand, the criticism is the B plus to me means that it's not a one-stop shop. I cannot just go there and choose different TVs for all my different use cases. It's just one. It's either you need MLA, you got it, but if you don't, then you have other brands that you'd look at first before you look at the C3 or the B3 and so forth.
And that's where I think I'm going to end it, because I think you just so eloquently put it. It is kind of a one-stop shop for that one thing. But for me, for them to be really successful is to stay in the conversation all year, especially since the way you and I control our content with our pre-fight and our Super Bowl and our, all these different shows. We still only had, say, the G3 at this time of the year. And we need something to keep that conversation going the whole year. And hopefully that's something that they benefit from. I love them. I hope they do amazing. But yeah, it's going to be a flat B for me and a B plus from our boy, Stop the FOMO. FOMO, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I had a blast. This is a long one, but this is the way we talk all year, guys. And really breaking these videos down this way, you're seeing us on the fly even come to different conclusions while we talk with each other. So thank you so much for joining us. Check out FOMO, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.
All righty. Thanks, buddy.
It's better to burn